Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to Education Station. So today's topic we're going to be focusing on is converting fractions. And namely, the fractions I'm speaking about is converting mixed numbers to improper fractions and improper fractions to mixed numbers. But before we get started with today's topic, we looked at a couple of vocab words in the previous lesson, and I'd just like to consolidate some of those words. So let's go and have a look at what those words were. So the first word I asked in the previous lesson that you need to focus on is the word fractions. So just there where you are right now, think of the word fractions and then you tell me, which you can't really do right now, but I want you to quickly think about what a fraction is. So I hope that you remember that a fraction is an equal part of a whole. And it's very important, I'm going to stress it today again, that you need to understand that it is an equal part of a whole. And then we did a representation of how it looked graphically. We said that is how a half would look. It's a whole divided into two equal parts. We had a third, which is divided into three equal parts. We looked at quarters, and then we had another one that was fifths. So the next word we're going to look at is proper fractions. So there where you are right now, think of what a proper fraction is. So a proper fraction is when the numerator is smaller than the denominator. Great. And an example we used last time was a quarter. So the next word we're going to look at, it's actually two words, and you had to concentrate on that in the previous lesson, was a numerator as well as a denominator. So my question to you today again is, can you remember which one the numerator is, and can you remember which one the denominator is? The top one I hope you remembered is called the numerator. So now the next question would obviously be, what does the numerator tell me? So the numerator tells me how many equal parts I have, or how many equal parts you are working with. For instance, if you have a graph or a pizza that's shaded, it's how many are shaded, that's how many parts you are working with. The next one is going to be the denominator, which is obviously the number below the division line. So what does the denominator tell me? I'm going to give you a second just to go through it in your mind quickly before I give you the answer again. So a denominator tells me how many equal parts the whole is divided into. Now today we're going to look at what it can tell me. Otherwise, it's basically the same thing, but the denominator for now tells me how many equal parts the whole is divided into. So today there are going to be a couple of words that you are going to have to know and that you're going to have to remember as we go forward with fractions as well. So the first word we're going to look at is convert, and you can see it down here on the screen. It's in a blue bubble. So convert means to be able to change something. So we're going to change mixed fractions into improper fractions, and we're going to change improper fractions to mixed numbers. But usually when your teacher will ask you a question, it'll be convert the following fractions into. So we like using mathematical language. It's just so that you know, convert actually means to change something. So the next word we're going to look at today is an improper fraction. So we did a proper fraction before, and we now know that the proper fraction is when the numerator is smaller than the denominator. So I'm going to ask you, think of what you've done in the previous grades, and you quickly tell me what the improper fraction, or what an improper fraction is. So an improper fraction, correct, I hope you remembered, is when the numerator is larger or bigger than the denominator. So in this case, I've given you 9 quarters. So 9 quarters, you can see the numerator is bigger than the denominator, and that is what we're going to be looking at today. We'll be able to take that improper fraction and convert or change it into a mixed number. The next word we're going to look at is common fractions. So can you remember what a common fraction is? So a common fraction, boys and girls, all that it is a fraction that consists of a numerator as well as a denominator, where the numerator and the denominator are whole numbers or integers. So that's all. It's common fraction. So the next question logically would obviously be, sir, but therefore would a improper fraction and a proper fraction therefore be a common fraction? And the answer is yes. Improper fractions as well as common fractions all form part of common fractions. So The next word we're going to look at today, and this is going to be the last one we're going to be focusing on now, is mixed numbers. So you can tell me, think about it, what is a mixed number? I hope you got that a mixed number is a number consisting of a whole number, but it also consists of a fraction. So here I've given you an example, 3 3/4. Now, I don't know about you or if this has happened to you before, but in my class sometimes it does happen that the children write the 3 very small, and then you'll go and mark the work and they'll see, but sir, this is definitely 3 3/4, and then it looks something like that, and then I'll be, no, it kind of looks like 33/4. So whenever you're writing a mixed number, please remember that your whole number has to be the same size as your fraction. It's just a little tip, but it could be the difference between losing a mark and actually getting the mark, because you could end up with that example there that does look like 33/4. So make sure that you do write the mixed number in the correct manner as well. So boys and girls, starting today's topic, we're going to look at converting fractions, and we're first going to start with converting improper fractions to mixed numbers. Now, I know that there are different types of textbooks that learners use at the present moment. At my school currently we're using Platinum textbooks. So I'm going to give you an extract of what the Platinum textbook says. I'll also put a link below, and if you don't have the Platinum textbook, this page, I'll put the link below and you can download that page for yourself. So they give an example, 9/5. And the example or the extract out of the book looks something like this, and it says, convert the improper fraction into a mixed number. Now, there are two methods that we are going to use, and one might seem quite arduous and can take quite long, and the second one is probably the shortcut that all your teachers have taught you by now. But we're going to look at both methods because everybody doesn't know their timetables as well as somebody else does, and therefore they might need to write down the multiples. So we're first going to look at the first method, and in this method I want you to notice that they are trying to figure out how many equal parts equal one whole. So you're going to have to ask yourself, if you've got 9/5, I'm going to explain it to you on the next slide. This is just an overview. So 9/5, I'm going to see how many times 5 goes into 9, and therefore you need to ask yourself the question, what fraction am I working with? So in this case, I'm working with fifths, and then the next logical question would then be, great, what does the fifth tell me? Now, we know that the denominator tells me how many equal parts the whole is divided into, but it also tells me how many equal parts I need to make a whole. So in this case, I need 5/5, which is over here. I need 5/5 to make one whole. So I'm going to say 9/5. I can take 5 away from them to make one whole, and that leaves me with 4/5, and therefore I've created a mixed number, which is 1 4/5. So let's go and have a look at the examples that I have given you here, using the method that we've just used on the previous slide. So I give you 24/5. Now, if you struggle with your multiples and if you struggle with your times tables, then this is the method for you. You're going to write down your multiples, and then you can count how many times your certain fraction part that you're working with goes into the numerator. So we're going to write down our multiples of 5. So we've got 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. We usually go one more, so it just makes calculation purposes easier. So now you can go and see how many times does 5 go into 24. So you can count. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4 times. It'll take me to 20 because 25 is more than what I have, so that it can't be 5. So I can now take out 4 wholes out of 24, and then I can go and write it down. I've got 4 wholes, and then I need to go and calculate. So if I use 20 of the 24 that I started with, I'm now going to subtract the 20 from the 24. It leaves me with 4/5, and I'm going to then go and add those 4/5 to the 4 wholes that I have taken from the 25/5, and your answer will be 4 4/5. So let's now look at example number 2. So we have 25. That's not what we have. We have 25/4. So now you're going to do the same thing. Step number 1, you're going to go and write down the multiples of 4. So we know that the multiples of 4 are 4, 12. It's not 4, 12. It's 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, and 28. Always, as we've just mentioned, go past the amount that you have here, which is 25. So then you go and see to yourself. Ask yourself the question, how many times now can 4 go into 25? And then you can go and count. You know that it's 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, and 24 will be able to go 6 times. So now you've taken 6 wholes out of 25 quarters. And then you have to go and do the next step, which is take the 24 that you've just used, subtract it from the 25 that you started with, and you will have 1 quarter left. Now you go and take 6, add the quarter, and you'll have 6 quarters. So boys and girls, we're now going to move on to method 2. And method 2 is probably the easiest method. It's probably the method that you use. It's the method that I use as well. But as I have mentioned, we're not all the same. So let's go and look at 24 fifths. So you ask yourself the question, how many times can 5 divide into 24? And if you do know your multiples and your times tables, you'll know that 5 times 4 equals 20. So you can go 5 goes into 24 4 times. So you can take out 4 whole numbers. Now you need to go subtract the 20 from the 24 and you're left with 4 fifths. And you go and add 4 fifths to your 4 whole numbers that you've already got, and your answer is 4 and 4 fifths. Let's go and have a look at example number 2, which is 35 sixths. So question number 1, how many times does 6 go into 35? Another way to ask that is, how many times does 6 divide into 35? And again, if you know your multiples and your times tables, you know that 6 times 5 equals 30, and therefore you can take it 5 times, or 6 goes into 35 5 times. So now you've got 5 whole numbers, and then you're going to say 35 minus the 30 that you've just used, and you're left with 5 sixths. Add them together, and your answer is 5 and 5 sixths. So next we're going to look at converting the last set of fractions for today, and that is mixed numbers into improper fractions. So again, there are 2 methods that you can use. This one is quite a long method. As you can see, I've written it there. But again, we're not all the same, and this is a method that you could use if this does help you. So, step 1, it says, convert the mixed number 2 and 4 sevenths into an improper fraction. And as you can see here, step 1 is identify the fraction that you're working with, because now you need to know how many fraction or equal fraction parts there are in a whole to be able to do this. So I know that we're working with sevenths. So now you're going to have to go and convert your whole numbers, in this case 2, into an improper fraction. So the question is, how many sevenths are there in one whole? You're right. So 7 sevenths equal 1 whole. And we know that because the denominator tells us how many equal parts the whole must be divided into. And therefore, it'll be 7. So you're going to take a whole number, which is 2, and you're going to add 7 sevenths twice because you have 2 whole numbers, and we now know that 1 is 7 sevenths. So 2 equals 7 sevenths plus 7 sevenths, and if you add them together, which you may do, why? Because their denominators are the same, so you're allowed to add the numerators, is 14 over 7. The next step would then be to take the sevenths that you still have, which is 4 sevenths, and add it to the whole number that you've just converted to an improper fraction, which is 14 sevenths. So 14 sevenths plus 4 sevenths is 18 over 7. And that is the answer. But we are going to do this step by step on the next slide. So let's go and have a look at example number 1. So we have 3 and 2 fifths. So first go and look at identifying which fraction are you working with here. In this case, we're working with fifths. So I know that 1 whole is equal to 5 fifths. So now I know it's going to be easy to convert 3 because that's the whole number I've got. I've got 3. I need to convert that into an improper fraction. So it will be 5 fifths plus 5 fifths plus 5 fifths. So 1 is 5 over 5, 3 times, and I'm left with 15 over 5. I'm going to take the 15 fifths that I've just converted. I'm going to add the 2 fifths that I started out with, and that leaves me with 17 fifths. Now I'm going to have a look at example number 2. Example number 2 is 4 1/3. So again, what's the fraction you're working with? In this case, we're working with thirds. So we know that 1 is equal to 3/3. Now I have to go and convert the 4 whole numbers that I have into thirds. So it's going to be 3/3 4 times. So let's add them together. It's 3/3 plus 3/3 plus 3/3 plus 3/3, and that gives you 12/3 or 12/3. So 12/3 plus the original third that I had when I started out this question, and I'm going to have 12/3 plus a third, and my answer therefore is 13/3. Now, boys and girls, we're going to have a look at the last one, which is method number 2. It is the shortcut. It is probably the method, again, that all of us use. But let's go and have a look at how it works step by step. So, step 1 would be to go and say, multiply the whole number with a denominator. Then, step number 2, add the numerator to the answer you've just found at step number 1. And the last step would be, take the answer you now have after you have multiplied the whole number with the denominator and you've added the numerator, and write that over the original fraction that you started with. In this case would be fifths. So let's go through that. Step 1, multiply 3 by 5, because it's multiply the whole number with the denominator or by the denominator, and that's 3 times 5 is 15. Step 2, add the numerator. So 15 plus 2 equals 17. Step 3, take 17 and put it over the original fraction you started with, which was 5, and therefore the answer would be 17/5. So let's go and do 2 examples together. So I'm going to give you 4 3/4. So step 1 is going to be multiply the whole number with the denominator. So it's 4 times 4, and that is 16. Step 2, add the numerator to 16, and that would be 16 plus 3, and you're left with 19. And therefore, step number 3 would take the 19 and write it over the original fraction we started with, which is quarters, and that would be 19/4. Therefore, if I had to ask you in a question paper, convert the following mixed number into an improper fraction, your answer would be 4 3/4, therefore equals 19/4 as an improper fraction. So boys and girls, let's go and have a look at the last example, which is 6 4/7. So step number 1 would be, take your whole number and multiply it by the denominator. In this case, it's 6 times 7. 6 times 7 is 42. Step number 2, add your numerator. 42 plus 4 equals 46. And step number 3 would be, take the 46 and write it over the original denominator, which is being divided obviously by 7. And therefore you have 46/7. So if I go and ask you in a test to convert a mixed number into an improper fraction, that would be your answer. 6 4/7 would equal 46/7. So if this is the method that you would use and want to use, I definitely prefer this method as well, because it's a lot quicker. Then you can use this method. So boys and girls, thank you for tuning in today, and I hope to see you soon for our next lesson. Have a fantastic day.